So, continuing on, we're going to discuss how you can actually drive growth through more effective sales training. And so, Gartner, who, if you're not familiar, is a research and advisory firm. This is actually some research they put out a few years ago and so they did research into these different areas, and so these are the high level of the results. So sales training is not, as they say, child's play. In this example, they're basically saying that, the 3-year-old would remember more than they do if they came to my sales training sessions. They don't listen. Okay, well, that is an issue. And we're going to see in a minute, why do people not listen? So key things we're going to look at are, what's the cost of ineffective sales training? Who should be doing the training? And what are the more effective learning approaches to use? So starting off, what's the cost if your sales training is poor? Well, it's going to be hard for your salespeople to sell. How are they going to sell if they don't fully understand the sales process, the products, the services, what your competitive advantage is? It's going to hurt your sales forecast because you aren't going to be as effective as you think you're going to be. So overall, it's going to, hurt you. And one example they used was with a new product launch, which happens all the time in businesses. And if training isn't planned along with your development of the product and through those stages, then oftentimes the new product's going to fail because you don't have the salespeople informed to support you. So you can see in the blue box, 50 to 75% of new product launches fail to at least reach expectations because their sales training lagged behind the product development. You've got to start with the planning at the same time as starting with the product development. And so ultimately what happens also to the salesperson is there's going to be lower morale. I don't know how to do my job effectively. I can't make my commissions. That would make someone frustrated. It would anger someone. You're not going to love your job. Obviously, you're not going to achieve as much. There's also going to be a lot more unpredictability within sales. So it's not going to be consistent because you don't know one customer versus another if you're going to have enough knowledge, have the process down enough to effectively sell to them, which is going to cause turnover and then overall a negative attitude towards training, because if it's ineffective training, then your people are going to see it as a waste of their time. I spent 2 days in this training and I learned nothing. In those 2 days, I could have been meeting with X number of customers and helped my commission. So your training really has to be thought through and very effective. So other things that can happen is damage to your brand through, if salespeople don't know the product or service, just making something up. And when someone makes something up, then they generally aren't going to be able to follow through on what they said. And that's going to damage your reputation, your brand, and you're not going to deliver what you promised. So what's the cost of ineffective training? We looked at that. So thinking of a starting point for training, the first thing we have to decide is, whose responsibility is it? So is it an HR responsibility? And in that sense, they could hire a sales training manager. Is it sales themselves? So maybe the sales manager? Is it product marketing? Or is it sales operations? And honestly, it's probably a mix of these depending on what the topic is. So with learning and development through HR, that's where you're looking at like, maybe corporate social responsibility, ethical and legal issues, that kind of stuff. With sales and sales operations, that's going to be CRM, that's going to be the sales process, that's going to be competition knowledge, customer knowledge, key differentiators, along with product and marketing or marketing contributing on the product and company knowledge side. Also on promotions they run and maybe pricing. The other thing is how people learn is very important. So you can see here that people are going to retain information better by either practicing by doing, so like a role play, or the CRM activities where you're actually working in a CRM system, or even teaching fellow students. So a lot of times that's called like a flipped classroom. So instead of the instructor teaching, you're responsible for, as a student or as the trainee, you're responsible for some content and presenting that to the training group. So it's not saying that don't ever do lectures. It's just, how do I mix what my different elements are in my training program? Well, I want to minimize lecture, maybe have that to introduce, then maybe do a demonstration, have readings. I want to do a mix of these things. And what it probably looks like is early on, you may be more lecture, reading, demonstration, maybe discussion based, maybe some videos. And then as I start to understand the concepts and have a better grasp of them, I can start practicing them and then even teaching fellow students. So this is how this class is set up. So the first 12 weeks or so of the semester, we're in that lecture, reading, audio, visual. You're doing some practice by doing some demonstration through your cases. And then the end of the semester is going to be really practice by doing and working alongside your fellow students and your group with the simulation. So that we hopefully capture everyone in terms of how people learn and the best way to learn. So other things to think about, things that need to be utilized during training, how long the session is. Having even an hour session is difficult. Planning your breaks, incorporating humor, any mnemonic devices. So, one I can think of as like spin selling. So situation, problem, and implication, need. That spin you can remember. Having testing elements. How am I going to know, especially if I'm doing a lecture, that you retain the information that I wanted you to? A lot of times that looks like a quiz. Or maybe it's reflected in a role play. And then let me stop here and then I'll do another video on this sales training course that'll be super short.